And I want to make sure that everything is dry on this painting. So I'm going to set this painting aside while we're letting it dry. And I am going to get out another piece of watercolor paper. And I'm going to show you how you can paint a painting without ever using a pattern with this water brush. And so this is what, when I say playing with my paint, often this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. And before I do that, I'm going to clean my palette. And so Elizabeth, have you done all your blue?
I'm working on it.
Okay, well, I want to wait
I'm
until
being
you're
fussy because I've got some edges.
okay. So I'm going to wait just a few more minutes until you're finished with that so that you can watch me, because I'm going to paint a little geranium right here. Okay, so now then you're watching me paint, and I'm going to paint a little geranium, and we're going to pretend like I'm going to draw a square on here. It's not going to be probably very much of a square because I'm not measuring it apart, you know, going through a lot of steps to make it just a perfect square. But we're going to pretend like this is the palette. And when you're like, if you're journaling or you're you know, you've just gotten your paint out and you just want to play with your color, this is something that you can paint real easily. If you watch this video or remember what I'm talking about, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put my brush right into that red. I'm not going to put it over here. And I'm going to do a geranium flower, and I'm just going to remember what a geranium flower, it's made up of a lot of other little flowers. Now then, I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to come over here on top of this, and I'm going to kind of make it a little bit messy. And now then I'm going to dry my brush off real well, and I'm going to come here and I actually picked up some color. So do you see all of that variation in there? We've got some real dark red, we've got some pink, we've got some little dots that look like, now that's what I call texture in in a painting. And so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw a stem on my flower, and it's not going to be straight, it's going to be crooked, and it's not going to be very long. You see, it's little tiny. Now then, I'm going to and you are using, if you're doing this with me, you're using whatever color of green you have. And now we're going to put some flowers on here. So geranium flowers are kind of circles. They're not, I mean, they're pretty big, you know, when you think about how big, you know, the leaves can be on a flower. These are pretty big leaves. And
Yeah,
now then, and then I'm going to take a little bit of my red, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to touch some of these leaves, you know, because the one thing about a geranium leaf is it's got some red in it.
yes.
And now I'm just going to leave that alone and let that dry. I'm not going to go back into those colors right now, but I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paint another flower, because this is going to be one of those little spindly geraniums that has already bloomed itself out, and you just put it in a perfect place in your house, and now it has created two more little blooms, and you think, oh my gosh, that just barely bloomed. Why can't it bloom like it did the first time? But you appreciate those little blooms so much. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do another little stem. And it really and truly, it doesn't have to touch everything. It just is what you visually see. And you see my leaves aren't just real red, but we're going to leave that alone until it completely dries. And then we're going to play with those leaves a little bit more. So now then I want to put this geranium in a clay pot. And I like to use browns when I do a clay pot. And so I'm going to take this brown and I'm going to wipe my brush. And we want to really kind of play with our paints here. So I'm going to mix this. So I'm going to go into my orange now, and I just laid the color down here on this palette, and I'm going to clean my brush again. So now I'm going to pick up that color, and the top of my clay pot is all the way up here. And then this is the clay pot. Do you see that I don't want to go in to my leaves? I want to make it look like those leaves were sitting on top of that clay pot. And now then, my clay pot needs a little saucer to catch the water when I water my geranium. And so that's all I'm going to do to be the saucer, is just that little line. And you know, I've looked at geraniums an awful lot. So maybe if you haven't looked at geraniums, and Elizabeth, it sounds like you have looked at them a lot. But you can trust me, or you can go find a geranium online, you know, Google geranium, and then go to images, and you'll see lots and lots of geraniums, and you'll see that the leaves are big, that if it's the second time that geranium has bloomed, it's probably going to be little spindly blooms like that. Now then I'm going to go into my green because my leaves are dry, and I'm going to kind of outline those leaves. So I'm using the tip of my brush. I want to try to have a point on my brush, and I'm going to, some of it's going to be kind of fat, but it's going to do a lot to the look of that overall. And now then I'm going to take that red and kind of touch it again so that it's a little bit darker. Oops, that was real dark. So I'm going to lift that up out a little bit, and I'm actually going to go back down with a little more green. So there you go. I'm going to leave all of that. And now I'm going to come over here. Oops, my brush wasn't real clean. See what a mess I'm making? Well, one of the reasons is because my palette is dirty. And that is what happens because you start painting fast and you stop paying a lot of attention. And the only point I'm trying to make here is that the slower you go, the more patient you are with your painting time, the better job you're going to do. And you want this painting to be nice, and you want to enjoy the time so much that we kind of learn to be a little more patient with ourselves. So I need to clean that green out that I got into my brush, into my color. And I want to go into that orange. And now I'm going to go back into my clay pot, and I'm going to put orange on top of that. And maybe that's a little bit more like how a clay pot would be. And now I want this to be a darker green right there. So I'm going to clean my brush and let my little geranium and clay pot dry. And I have a text, and I want to okay, so I have somebody that's telling me that they're sorry that they had not been able to join me. And also I saw a photograph that Elizabeth had sent me of her pink iris, which is another thing that I love to just paint. And so I'm going to come over here in this space. And honestly, y'all, this is what my journal looks like sometimes when I really, really am having a good time journaling. And I'm going to come in here in this red, and I am going to paint. Now, I'm not going to get that pretty color that Elizabeth's iris have, because those are real soft pink iris. But we're going to paint an iris, and it's probably going to be real light colored. And Elizabeth's iris have the little curls on the petals, and that's a little bit harder to—
They're lacy.
Yes, they're lacy, but that's a little bit harder to paint than and my brush needs to be a little bit wetter, because what I have here, see these white areas, that's called dry brush.
Beautiful.
And you know, sometimes you want a dry brush, sometimes you don't. But right there, I have done 3 petals, 4 or 5 petals. So I've got the petals that stand up in an iris, and I've got the petals that come down. And now I'm going to clean my brush. And like I said, I'm going to clean my palette. And painting with me on Saturday morning is just like this. These good habits have to be established from the beginning. And so many teachers teach that it doesn't matter, that you don't have to have, and see, I'm using this light green because most people don't have 2 greens. So I'm going to stay with this light green. But this time we're going to mix a little bit of blue into it.
Nice.
So I'm going to take this blue, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit darker green by adding this blue. So we'll be able to compare it to the green over here that we painted a minute ago. So when you have a stem, especially a stem on an iris, it's going to be really long. I recommend that you never do a stem just real long line. One is it's not going to be very pretty if you do. And 2, when you do art, you want the stem to be art. And the eye reads that as one stem. So now then we're going to do those fat leaves of the iris. And you know how always you've got 1 or 2 that kind of lean over.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of my base. But do you see I opened up that brush when I did that? And looky here, I'm going to make that one even longer. And do you see how it looks just like iris look? And it's a little bit greener, a little bit darker. And I'm going to go ahead and bring my stem down a little bit more. So another color that's kind of on most iris is a little bit of yellow, but it always kind of looks like it might be you know, an old bloom. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to mix it with that orange, and we're going to put a little area right here that looks like it used to be a bloom. And we've just used the colors that we have and created that look right there. And I'm going to take this yellow and I'm going to put some little tiny bit. Now, I don't know if your iris have beards but we're
Oh,
gonna
they did.
they're gonna pretend. Yeah, you said they do. So
Yes.
I put a little bit of yellow up there. You see what it took to build that iris. Now then, I'm gonna clean my palette, and I'm gonna make sure that my brush is good and clean. And while that is drying, I'm going to, while these paintings are continuing to dry, I'm going to refill my brush because I need water now. And you might also. Everybody paints a little different. Everybody holds the brush different, in that water is gravity fed, you know, and so it all depends on how you hold your brush. And I got a little bit of water on the painting, but I've dried it now, so it's no problem. And I'm going to set this one aside, and we're going to come back and work on our other painting. And now then, my geranium is dry, completely dry. My iris is completely dry, and I'm ready to kind of have fun with the ink pen with, well, actually, this is an ultrafine Sharpie. My very favorite tool to do this with is a Prismacolor. I don't have one that doesn't have tape on it, I'm afraid. But it's a Prismacolor. You can see it there, 0.03. I guess the light's not right for that to be just easy to read. But most of my students have the ultrafine Sharpie. And so that's what we're going to use. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do some little circles. See, it really catches the attention of the eye. And you see that I just kind of ignored my green stem. And this one, I do want it smaller and less. And now then, I'm gonna just come in here. I'm not gonna do outlines over all of them in there because I've already done some outlines, and a lot of things bring the attention to that. And then I'm going to do that, and then take this line that way and come around here. And then I'm gonna go in front of, and do you see how it looks like more like a saucer? And I've brought in all of that white area, and that's a lot of fun. And then if this was my journal, I might take this and do some little designs to frame my little painting that I've done here. It's just fun to make a frame yourself for your art and turn those corners however you want to. It doesn't have to be square or any shape, but do you see how that just like looks? And it was fun to do, and it was practice on using this pen in a way that you didn't think about it too much. You weren't too fussy. You didn't try to do it just perfect. And then I wanted to remember that I came in here with that yellow and did the little beard. And I'm sure you've noticed I have a little bit of a trimmer. And so sometimes, actually real often, I hold my hand. And I recommend that if you have that also, that you, don't worry about it. Just find ways of overcoming it. Now, aren't those just the cutest little things you ever saw?
Yes, yes.
And if I was real excited about this, I would probably sign my name just really big on this picture. For instance, like, if it was in my journal, I might do that, because it's real important to celebrate yourself every once in a while. It's just part of what I call practicing happiness,
Nice.
but it's also saying, well done, that was fun. And, I can look at this painting and I can say, oh, I wish I hadn't done this and I wish I hadn't done that. But something, the only person that's listening to that is you. And it just is not worth it. It's more fun to celebrate that you did it at all. And
It doesn't go anywhere either, Kathleen.
right.
It's all bad.
Right.
That's the one thing I've so appreciated that I've learned from you.
Yes.
Don't go there.
Right. Just let it be wonderful, because
Exactly.
the time you spent doing it was the point, and it was so wonderful. So it was the experience of it rather than the having of this perfect thing. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you'll put that in the corner of the room and look at it every once in a while for the next couple of days, I'll bet you anything it makes you smile. That I want to do with my little painting over here. So does the mat fit on this? No, I didn't plan it to do that. I didn't have any reason that I was worried about, but this, I want to take you to the thought of planning your art. This is one of the reasons why I said I do this in my journal, because if I'm in my journal, this is my very favorite journal, and this is a journal that's sold on my Etsy store. I'm trying to find. So do you see that in my journal,
Oh, nice.
I write and write and write, and then I had this space left, and it was on that same day that I went and painted that painting, because this painting has something to do with what I wrote. But it's not a bit unusual for it to not have anything to do with what I write. And on any given day, I might come in here and do a painting like this. And then on another day, I write what I want to write around it. And
oh, that's beautiful.
All the way through my journal, that's the way it is. It's just what I want it to be. And that's what your journal can be, is just what you want it to be. I recommend in the front of your journal that you don't paint on the front pages. So I really think it's time to stop the class. And Elizabeth, if you want to stay a little bit longer.
No, I need to get going myself.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm really, really glad you joined.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Thank you.